Hi, everybody. I am Hayley Haugen. I am the editor and publisher of Sheila-Na-Gig Online and Sheila-Na-Gig Editions. And today we are celebrating the publication of Gary Glauber's newest collection, Inside Outrage. And Gary will be reading for us for about 20 minutes, and then he'll be followed with some open mic readers from Sheila-Na-Gig Online Fall 2022 issue. So welcome, and so you're going to sit back and have a good time. So a little bit about Gary. Gary Glauber is a widely published poet, fiction writer, teacher, musician, former music journalist, business owner, and sports writer. He's the author of 5 collections of poetry, Small Consolations from Outrage Press, Worth the Candle from 5 Oaks Press, Rocky Landscape with Vagrants, Cyberwit Press, A Careful Contrition, Shanti Arts, and Inside Outrage by Sheila-Na-Gig Editions. He's also published 2 chapbooks, Memory Mary's Desire from Finishing Line Press, and The Covenant of Equanimity, Sir Vision Books, which was winner of the 2019 James Tate Poetry Contest. We're so excited to finally meet you, Gary, on video here and have you here to celebrate your book. So welcome.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Hayley, and thank you everybody who's part of Sheila-Na-Gig, because it's such a special place. So I urge everyone who's not familiar with it to go there online and purchase as many books as you possibly can. It's a wonderful place to be. All right, today we're celebrating Inside Outrage, a book that I'm really proud of, and I hope you enjoy some of the selections today. First one is a poem about time, because this book is really about a lifetime in poetry. It's called Blocked. According to blocked universe theory, our perception of time is wrong. It blinds us to its true nature, a 4-dimensional block. If all time is simultaneous, past, future, and present, all going on always relative to me and my experience, then let me travel back to correct mistakes. Let me travel ahead to learn valuable lessons. Let me share this moment with you forever, not letting pretender time come along to destroy it. For time is not on our side, nor is it of the essence. It won't tell, it won't march on, nor will it heal all wounds. Let us celebrate the infinity of our limited mortality, the strands of plural occurrence that appear as false chronology. It's only a man-made construct to help our feeble brains to better understand the inestimable unknowable. In that, it's much like a poem. Thank you. Poem about poetry. That was kind of fun. All right, now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and tell you a little bit about this next poem, which actually has to do with Fred Rogers. Mr. Rogers and his neighborhood. I actually got to meet him once. He's a charming man, but the show itself I was not a big fan of. Maybe I was too old for it. Maybe it just never clicked with me, or I just didn't think it was creative enough. At any rate, there were lots of documentaries about him and all sorts of things. I have nothing against the man, but this is called The Favorite Fish is the Dead Fish. It's a language unto itself, expressed in green crayon to flaunt the idea of genius doing whatever it wants. Possibilities are fluid, like a serious man's puppet show. Or perhaps that's just his way of surrendering to this world's unreasonable controversy. No asylum exists, so he hides in plain sight, on air, online, on the big screen, and lets puppets do all the heavy lifting. Real in its scary simplicity, the message is pleasant enough. Until you consider the backstory of the spoiled boy's latent backlash at an unforgiving populace. Then it's just another ordinary cry for help. The staid patron saint of love is Borden wants to live next door, convince you of your unique importance, offer you trophies for participation, for breathing, for life itself. The angry world rejects the meek messages of strange complacence, of even-tempered intrusion. Animals understand, yet the important fish still lies on the bottom of the busy tank, dead to the possibility, transformed into this week's lesson. A shallow grave for the formerly sentimental, something we can talk out over time. Bury until talk fails us, until failing is called success. When entropy takes over as beautiful day and neighborhood is revealed as alternate universe, it's a temperate surprise, an unheralded stand-in, unexpected zombie apocalypse. The call of the mild invades our very souls until we float on, belly up and staring out into watery void, silence forever, dumbfounded. Thank you. It's weird with everybody muted. It's like talking to the void. All right. Where do we go from here?
Hooray!
Thank you. All right, so here we go. Next, we're basically going to go towards school. As you know, I'm a teacher, but I've also been a student at one point. This is about being a young student, and I don't know how elementary school teachers manage to do it year after year, particularly when so many youngsters are little devils at heart. This is one called Learning to Read. When dusty boards proclaimed stark elementary truths, we saw letters as cryptic hieroglyphs. Tiny chalk-marked stars in a blackboard of heavens, we were quick to break into devious alliances, slow to learn to read. Our souls were poisoned by delinquent fifth graders drinking pilfered strawberry wine in the park across the way. They were dangerous, wanted others to know it. We could see them through the chain links surrounding our playground. While someone beat chalk erasers, we yearned for Tanya and her hot pants wearing friends, donning pretend confidence like worn denim jackets, passing round the contraband, being the new tragic. We wanted it too. Wickedness and cigarettes seemed better than what weekly readers offered, dreams of what might be versus what was. Windy public school days, collages of cliques and dioramas. She stood her ground, all 5 feet of her, gravelly voice churning out letters in an incessant practice of cursive writing that filled our restless sojourns. We patrolled the grounds as though we owned the place, learning fast how attitude defined playground hierarchy. Our thunder could not rain upon her imminent retirement. She could wait us out, scrawny pretenders to the throne, certain of the harsh upcoming headed our way. When the cops came and arrested those vagrant fifth graders, we pretended halos and wings could elevate innocence into convincing penance. But catechism never taught questions like those our parents were asking. She used the long pole to open longer windows from the top down, where only cooing pigeons flew by, making sure we read our primers. No one spoke of the blackness in our hearts, how our heroes were angry, evil posers, headed for places where power evaporated like wind. Hearing their stories third-hand, we created legends around those whose names ended in open vowels, tough guys whose fathers drove big trucks. Ignorance was our proud common denominator, along with 26 letters, the keys to expression for unlocking a world designed to be opened by the young. She smiled knowingly, assured she had wrangled another herd of unruly steers toward the lofty plains of second grade, and so close to the verdant pasture herself, far from Dick and Jane and Spot, and the relentless chatter of bratty first graders. Soon she would be free to enjoy a relaxing symphony of sustained, child-free silence. Thinking she was happy for us, we thanked her in ways that were sadly inadequate. as loud music on tiny radios assured us that even crossfire hurricanes and driving rains would somehow be all right. That someone wanted to hold our hand. We believed it all, now able to read the lyrics. For a time, it made us happy inside. Thank you. Beatles, Rolling Stones references. All right. Now, time for some love poems. And again, once you go through a whole lifetime, the love poems turn a little bit different than they might have been otherwise. This one is called Dance in 4 Movements. 1. When they first dance, he has no real knowledge of dancing. The steps are hesitant, clumsy, remote, showing a beginner's awkwardness. Inside, his heart dances with great elan and flair, a flame flickering with ignorance. There is a great bounty yet of hope. 2. They meet again in a foreign land, and the grand dance resumes. She pretends not to have followed him there. Their bodies now understand the interplay, energy and inertia, the mingling and grace. It is a dance of greed and desperation, of long history and swaying need. Their eyes meet and they carefully proceed. She follows his lead. The movements bring happiness, even if it is only illusion. Such perfection is never real. They thank the Terpsichorean muse before parting, his pas de deux. 3. Years later, he is dancing alone. He thinks back with gratitude on his partner from kinder years. He is devoted to the memories, the steps and routines, how this discipline freed him from the usual, the love that might tumble to grief. 4. The old man can only manage a few brittle moves. The turns are now accompanied by pain. He gives his best to venture a dance for all the dreams long faded. Spinning jumps sputter forth, mere shadows swat for passion. He knows the steps, but body refuses, and he learns anew sorrow of limits bewilderment. He yearns for that first dance and a lifetime of learning, one imperfect step at a time. One more love poem, and the fact that sometimes opposites attract. This one is called Longshot. We'll find it for you momentarily. Longshot. We are drawn to the allure of the impossible. She is Nordic perfection, an ethereal vision, a sprite taming woodland animals, speaking the reindeer language. Her very presence suggests a play by Strindberg, something serious, representational, confounding. Her ghost sonata voice of distant cello plays on brisk winds, reciting whole passages of Kafka, Camus, and Wilde, seeing bleak reality fraught with contemplative angst. Me, I'm more of a Shecky or Rodney, a stand-up kind of guy with roots on the Lower East Side. Overstuffed deli sandwiches are the sloppy oeuvre of my silly observations. I am crowded subway car, urban sprawl of loud, sweaty complainers. The noise, the speed, the chaos allows no moss to grow underfoot. Mine is a cracked mirror universe, lacking serenity, and perhaps that is why I am so drawn to her loner's solitude and peace, those green eyes and soft curves, her ability to sit and read and ponder. She is peace. I am war. Yet the same rain envelops us in springtime, and she'll urge me to cast aside bruised psyche, to feed the million hungry pigeons gathered in Belvedere Fountain. Soundtrack swells into blossom crescendo, and I can almost taste green tea on her honeyed lips, the promise of words before they arrange into memorable stanzas. Siren's silent call is enticingly inviting, yet disarming as romance found within graveyards. Inhaling the gift of her forgiveness, I call for more, a gesture, a reckoning, a miracle. Reminded that even the occasional clunker hoisted up from the corner hearkens toward reverse parabola and finds nothing but net. Thank you. All right, on to something topical, or semi-topical. This is actually a poem that was published, it was sort of coincidence and kismet, but this poem was sent out before something actually happened, and it was the week that Starbucks had a racial incident in Philadelphia, and then they shut down every Starbucks to retrain their staff to be better people, allegedly. It's called Intolerance Afternoon. No one wanted to wait on the mermaid. I couldn't believe the rudeness. She was out of her element, waiting on this long line nowhere near the water. The barista acted like she wasn't even there, but she was, patiently waiting her turn, eager to order. She deserved her vanilla latte as much as the next guy, who happened to be me. I had been behind her, trying to pretend I didn't notice the resemblance to the national chain's logo. Same enchanting smile, same long locks of hair. Did they not hear that uniquely dulcet tone, the unmistakable foreign accent? I stood there mute when they passed her by and turned to me instead. I refused to be party to this obvious act of blatant prejudice. What was the deal? No shirt, no legs, no service? No way. Her scales glistened in what I perceived to be righteous rage. It reminded me of that time at the barber shop when they refused service to the giant who stopped in for a trim. They said it was by appointment only and ignored the way he barely fit into the chair. He sat there for a time, all awkward knees and elbows. But these barbers were a stubborn lot. He looked at me, exasperated, sighed, then he got up. Something in the look told me he got this a lot. There's small, and then there's petty, was what he said before storming out. When I finally opened my mouth, it was with the fast solution at hand. I spoke out the very order she had been repeating over and over again, followed by my own. I spoke slowly, and the barista repeated it back. I gladly paid for hers and was happy to hand over the green and white cup a few minutes later, not so much as an act of flirtatious friendliness, but more one of true civil justice. Thank you. And now, here's one about friendship, which is the kind of friendships that we maintain even when we're perhaps not the best person to turn to for advice. This one's called Talking. Let's do things, not talk about them, she says. Then she talks endlessly. Nothing is as bad as love. Always in love, suffering from love, always suffering. She is full of empty promises that keep us apart. Maybe she needs a woman who can better relate. I am close enough in age to understand horrors of young love. So why are we sitting in this sad restaurant at 1 a.m. in a city that magnifies the problem? Confrontation works. See if there is love in her eyes. It can't be hidden. Love is a god, she says, making everything work. An effective but angry god. I feel ancient, she says. She doesn't look bad. Finding another would be a good idea, but she can't. She is in such a state, talking to stay alive. If this is being done now, she will do it again. Be ready. Confront her or don't love her. Hiding is insane. It's not love in her eyes, it's something else. Something with great meaning that I don't understand. Vacant consolations express. Don't worry, you'll get her back. It's never too late. Never. Now, a quick poem about my life in the suburbs and the little things we go through week to week. It's entitled Errand Boy. I carry out the trash and with it an unburdening of suburban responsibilities. Careful care of tended lawn, weight of native souls long gone from formerly forested high ground. I am haunted with afflictions of love, desires to simplify mortgage and insurance shackles, shady cloud formations, slow dancing across fading cerulean sky. This is the pedal steel's low wail of sweet longing, open tuning that invites unassuming ear to listen. This is how weeds invade gardens, how those sporting antlers make scant winter meals last, how lush growth morphs into bright, blinding, bleak terrain. I sing along with coyote packs' yowls, goose flesh raised in reflexive salute, bloodlust of the wild unleashed toward unsuspecting moon. Martyrs of the makeshift unite, sliding over black ice toward dark inevitable, eyes closed to him of engine thrum, careening anthem-like chorus, calling Aeolus from afar. Rust never oxidizes here, and everything stays just so, courier and eyes with an insider's nod and wink. The cans stand at the end of the driveway, innocuous bystanders like ancient seers, lifted and emptied. But back again brimful with insights, same time, the very next week. Just a few more. One that I'm going to do here by request, since I actually have a few former and present students here and other teachers as well. This is something called, Have You Graded the Essays Yet? I'm sure you can appreciate it. My student says, what the main character does is of the utmost importance. It's not so much just nature versus nurture, but also the fact that he has experienced great neglection in his formative years. It's a schema, she tells me, one that she learned about in psychology, or maybe theory of knowledge. It's all theoretical, that much I realize, especially in this day of age. The same way someone has theoretically absconded with all the possessive apostrophes and many of her commas. A grammatically correct paper would be the sign of a looser, which I envision as a spineless moray of a creature barely able to sit upright and borrow a pen from a classmate. She plays fast and loose with the conventions of standard English usage. Does spelling count? She wants to know, defiantly, as if standing up to the metaphorical shackles of the grammar man. Unable to remember one character's name, she spells it 3 different ways within the essay. And Edward Estlin Cummings, your sweet lowercase victory is assured, now that today's Generation Z has proclaimed the death of capital letters for things like names and the letter I. Still, I mark on, my red pen signaling changes to a generation seemingly immune to them. Writing is a lost art, along with the reading. The practical wisdom inquires along the lines of, why read when I can SparkNote or Schmoop it? And while we're pursuing the inanity of adolescent logic, let's hear another volley of questions regarding literary choices. Why don't we read anything with a happy ending? Learning life lessons is of the utmost importance, I remind them, knowing that there is a special place in heaven for those that have to grade high school English essays. Does everything have to be included in the thesis? Do we need an introduction and a conclusion? How many paragraphs would be a good number? I try to maintain a semblance of reasoned wisdom when I tell them 11 teen. And that's why I am English, not math. Thank you. And now, my closing poem will be the closing poem from this collection, a fine collection, which I highly recommend. It's called Recycled. It begins in the end, which is confusing enough, but logical in many awkward ways. A life lived long enough can result in deterioration, loss of control, reducing eldest back to pseudo-infancy. In the end, you. Who else? This makes sense. When all is said and done, what more does anyone have but the essence that has been called you? A layered identity that defines a life in its various and sundry iterations. So very true, so very you. In the end, you must. Many dictums, so little time. Even toward the end, there is no let up on rules to be followed, laws to be heeded, taxes to be paid, social customs to be minded. Only death frees you from the justice of must, simply because. In the end, you must forgive. After all these many years of countless sins and misdemeanors, of poor intentions and iffy results, of attitude problems, bad habits, worse choices, regrets, and things done either accidentally or on purpose, penance, absolution, a clearing of the score is most desirable, if even possible. Make a list and try to work your systematic way through this important and lengthy apologia. In the end, you must forgive yourself. This, alas, is the hardest part. Easier to make your peace with even the worst of enemies, because it is the end, and you must come at long last to a loving reckoning not easily achieved. Look in the mirror and know you tried. Every life is a beautiful tapestry of failure and victory, wins and losses, pains and pleasure, but find your way to love the one who bears the brunt of blame. Yes, this is the most difficult task, but also the most necessary. In the end, you must forgive yourself. In the end, you must forgive yourself. In the end, you must forgive yourself. Thank you, and I will now turn it over to our other readers from the latest fall edition of Sheila-Na-Gig.
And before we get there, I just want to thank you, Gary, so much. It's always so wonderful to hear the poems as they're meant to be read after spending so much time laying them out and just seeing them, you know, as poems on a page in layout format. And as an editor, it's always exciting to go back to their true nature and get your voice in there too. So very, very exciting. And I'm so glad you ended on that last one too, because it's so hopeful and just wraps up the collection so well as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we are turning over to our open mic readers now, and our readers will read one or two poems from our fall edition of Sheila-Na-Gig editions, Sheila-Na-Gig Online. And we're going to open with a familiar face here as George Franklin.
Thank you, Hayley. Yeah, I'm going to start with one that's in Sheila this time, called Sunday. In the future that doesn't exist yet, I wake sluggishly on a Sunday, press dry lips against your shoulders and neck, wrap my leg over yours, and still half dreaming, let my hand drift across your breast, down to the sheets twisted by gyrations of love and sleep. Morning light evades the shutters, reveals the wall by the closet, the Chinese calligraphy framed above the desk, the one a monk gave me 40 years ago, and the chair where your robe waits, folded, patient, nearly as smooth as your skin beneath my hand. In the future that doesn't exist yet, we will eventually be missing. I don't remember what the calligraphy meant. I think it had something to do with emptiness and form, How even when we're here like this, it's not for long. But we don't need calligraphy to tell us that. We hold each other for a while and then make coffee. And this is a poem that was in Sheila-Na-Gig previously. It's called Writing About Your Country. In the next room, you're writing about your country, about a man who wouldn't leave his farm and was killed by paramilitaries, about hillsides thick with trees, green moss covering a stone, a boulder. It makes me think of our friend Federico, who practices medicine in the small town in the Andes. I hunted for it on the map and it was hard to find. The pictures on Google showed a white church and narrow streets, nearby mountains, clouds that seemed close. In the next room, you were close also, closer than clouds hovering above a valley, or the sound of motorcycles fading into something that's almost silence. I can hear a piano, passages of Chopin, a disc you're playing on an old laptop as you work, a few dates and almonds in a bowl within reach, as close as the asylum narratives you translated, refugees who applied for visas during the bad years, years that haven't stopped, applicants threatened by gangs, by paramilitaries, guerrillas, so many stories you had to find words for in cold, precise English, voices you transposed from Colombia or Venezuela, reminding you of relatives in Cali, or when you taught workshops in Buenaventura, voices to cut through the dull gaze of immigration officials, their eagerness to finish work, to go play golf or tennis on the weekend. In the next room, I can hear you whispering lines of a poem, the same way I do, the same way we all do when we write, listening to ourselves, to our own voices, trying to decipher the words that will break through our own dull gaze. In the next room, you are writing about your country, which is both far away and close to you. From where I'm sitting, I can hear you whisper. Thank you.
Next up is Joe Cottonwood.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
You okay here? Okay. You may also hear my dog barking in the background. I can't quite convince him to be quiet. But the poem I have in the current issue is called Antietam Creek. And I grew up in Maryland, and in the 1960s, for some reason, Civil Wars battles were being reenacted. It was a 100-year anniversary of these battles. People would dress up in blue and gray, and it seemed like they were celebrating the Civil War. It never made sense to me. But anyway, the countryside in Maryland is littered with historical markers. This one's called Antietam Creek, which was the bloodiest day in American history, actually. Number of teenagers, basically, who killed each other. Antietam Creek. We dog and house sat for a rich family every summer, gathering aunts and uncles to the big stone house near grassy rolling battlefields where 100 years ago, cousins slaughtered cousins. Cousin Buff was my summer buddy, throwing tennis balls for Cookie, who dropped them slobbery at our bare feet. One time, gently between doggy lips, Cookie brought a crumbling hip bone, and the sheriff said, "Yeah, poor kid," because so many were so young and their bones preserved better, as if they wanted to grow old. Buff was always 2 years taller, liked banjos, laughed at city music, laughed at me for saying siren instead of siren. Then, one summer, Buff had a girlfriend with an actual bosom, and I was still a kid, like pressing my face against glass as he left my life. Buff died, I learned from a Facebook photo of an old man I never saw, blaming abortions and gun control for his cancer. And I bet if he met me, we would fight. And I thought I'd pair that with another poem that's another cousin poem. I think cousins in war occupied a lot of my time. This one's a female cousin and her husband. It's called Shirtless Dusty. I first met Dusty on a beach beside the Chesapeake Bay in this photo where he's dating my cousin Liz, who suddenly grew a body. Dusty's the one with chest hair. I'm the kid with glasses. In this photo, Vietnam, shirtless again, he's on a riverboat behind a machine gun, writes, "Stay in college, stay the hell out of here." Next, here's him shirtless and Liz shirted in the shack he built out of tar paper and wooden pallets. 3 kids raised and gone. Bankers stole his pension when they looted Bethlehem Steel. Dusty repairs boats, raises a pig that sleeps under the house. Here at the Chesapeake Bay again, Liz is dumping Dusty's ashes from a borrowed sailboat. Agent Orange kills him, though the doctors won't admit it. His life like firing a rifle at the sky. A disturbance, the air closes over. We open our shirts. We see the bullet strike here, right here. That's it. And next will be Juan.
Good evening. Hello, everyone. So I also will read 2 poems. Just for a little background, I am born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and an adopted son of New York for much longer. I thought of reading 2 poems about my mother. The anniversary of her passing is in 10 days. And I'm sure she'll be tickled to rub it into my father in whatever apartment they share in the other world anyway. So I'm going to start with the poem that Sheila-Na-Gig and Hayley, thank you, took in the last issue. And then I'm going to read another one that is from my chapbook. It came out this year called Contraband. So again, I hope you do with my South London accent via Argentina. The Sacrament of Grapefruit. My mother would spoon the grapefruit's flesh, piece by piece, out of their casings, and sprinkle them with sugar to entice her 2 young boys, to give bitterness a mild and early try. She was taught that God must always be forgiven for not answering our prayers because we were too flawed, too self-involved, or too damn mortal to understand even a fruit. That was my mother's grapefruit sacrament. Her hope we grew a rind thick enough to live and tell about it, to be ready to face a tart existence, its bitter pulp arranged in strict compartments. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And all I want to say about the second poem, of course, about my mother, she would be very mad if I don't read about her. It's called Farewell and was apropos of her death. So 2 things to say. One is what I say in it in the first 2 lines is true. The rest is poetry. And taxis in Argentina used to be yellow and black. That's the only reference you need. So here we go. Farewell. My mother passed away in the back of a Buenos Aires taxi. Her friend thought she was sleeping. My mother loved taxis. On buses, she was somber, circumspect like a locksmith attending to the groove that would unlock a single door. But in taxis, she would come alive. They were a luxury she let herself enjoy, delighting in the traffic, counseling the driver on joyous purpose. In the back seat, she would imagine what ease of means might be. Had she not chosen to be ashes scattered where my father's were, the hearse would have been followed by a caravan of black and yellow carts. You would have seen old and young men driving without passengers in mourning for my mother. Trucks would not impose their size and cut anyone off for a change. And the lights would turn green as they approach each corner. I think she would have loved to know that they all came to pay respects, a line as long as a pedestrian's eye could see. Bus drivers would suddenly stop making fare change and bow their heads. At the eulogy, the priest would raise his hands and slowly say, "Farewell, beloved passenger. May the scent of vinyl that always brought you joy accompany you to heaven. Farewell." Thank you. And the second poem was from my chapbook, Contraband, that just came out. So I just posted the link in case you want to know more about me or read some more poems in there. Thank you. And now I have to announce the next reader, correct? I'm just going back to where, okay, here. All right, it's Lisa Morin or Morin Garcia. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Lisa Morin Cartia, and I want to say thank you to Hayley and everyone at Sheila-Na-Gig Online for the opportunity to share my work. I'd like to read both of the poems that appear in the current issue. I live in the Seattle area right now, but I was born and raised in Southern California, and this first poem comes out of that experience. Western Water Song. We dance with drought. We love the sun, but underneath we sense the lack. We live and die by snowpack. Stubble showing through a dusting at the summit in December stokes a subtle panic. We climb the pass at dawn and hope the chill portends. We see our breath, but not the spell we hope to cast. No word nor snow descends. This next poem was inspired by a short talk on Enypniastes, which is a species of swimming sea cucumber. It's also known by several other names, including Spanish dancer and headless chickenfish. A deep sea blessing for bedtime. In the abyssal zone of sleep, pressure like a weighted blanket holds me close. Better off boneless, capable of full body flow. Better off eyeless, traveling by feel, by current, by smell, the oldest sense we have. Big, hungry cerebral cortex, hush. Body, be an invertebrate swimmer, all touch and pulse, resisting nothing, dancing solo in the ecstatic darkness. Thank you. Our next reader is Donna.
I clicked the wrong way. So here I am. Well, what a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Hayley, for your support of my work and your support of all the wonderful poets here. I'm going to read the poem that I have in the last issue of Sheila-Na-Gig, and I'm going to read one other from my manuscript in progress, which was this other poem was published in One Art. So I've got my two favorite journals. That is for sure. All right. Walking in Door County on Palm Sunday. I'm from LA, so I welcome the way drivers wave with their whole hand in greeting when they pass me walking the highway leading, I'm told, to Green Bay. I imagine they smile and say, "Good day," on their way to the church I am walking away from. White church with a steeple I, bad navigator, use for my still point to find the path back to my temporary home. I fear the sun won't hold. At the bend in the road, I turn toward the steeple, then turn again and head back to the bay. Though uphill and hard, the way home is always faster, and I can walk it in the rain. Pretty much all I do, I think, with my life is walk and cook. So if I was trying to pick a second poem to read, I mean, I could have chosen from many walking poems or cooking poems. So this poem was published in One Art and will be a part of my next manuscript. Iron skillet. I am cleaning you now with coarse salt and a paper towel. Skillet of my mother, grandmother, and her mother before her. You fried chickens, raised, killed, plucked, dressed on farms in backyards by generations of women whose children watched in fascination and fear. You fried bacon, eggs over easy, baked cornbread, baked biscuits, grilled sandwiches, fried fold-over pies for farmers, mechanics, civil servants, teachers. Last night, I blackened a sea bass on your flat belly, where tonight potatoes and carrots will nestle and roast, while an omelet browns on top of the stove. Skillet, trusty instrument of nurture. I appraise your amazing utility, plurality of purpose, example of endurance, how easily you fashion meal after meal, serve us, feed us, reseason, restore. Thank you. I'm not sure who's up next because I get very confused with the chat.
It's okay, Donna.
Thank you.
Our next reader, and this is also our final reader because one person was missing tonight. And so our final reader tonight is Cynthia Atkins.
Hi, can everybody hear me? Good evening. It's nice to see some familiar faces and friends and new faces too. And congratulations to everybody that's been in this journal. I said when I first posted the journal that I had Sheila-Na-Gig envy. So I've always had a lot of friends published in this magazine. I always wanted to publish here, so I'm thrilled. And thanks, Hayley and everybody else. It's nice to be in your company. Here's the poem that was in the journal, and it's a pretty new poem from manuscript in progress called Honeymoon of Sorrows. The poem is called The Place of No Return. And just to give you a little backdrop, I started it the week that the Ukraine war started. And then in the backdrop of that was also the the road decision that was, remember that leak that was coming out. So this poem kind of fuses both of those things. The place of no return. When you put the headphones on, you see all the roads compiled in your shoes. They follow you to the places you will cease to go. First kiss, tiny head pronouncing itself from your uterus. Over here, on a large movie screen, a silhouette of a couple embracing. The woman has vintage hair and lipstick. Rape? Your mother never spelled it out. How can something be without a word for it? Never again play hopscotch or know yourself as a virgin, thrown on a bed like a stuffed toy. Folded maps and billboards sent us in the wrong direction. Girls, you don't own your own property or your body. Wars are started for no more than a pebble being thrown on the wrong side of history. The seasons turn like little girls doing cartwheels. You could never do one, even though you tried and tried in fields and parking lots. There's a silhouette of a couple being pixelated on a large movie screen. Out of gas, American cars are parked. Teenagers giving hickeys in crew neck sweaters, crooning at black and white movies on the tiered brick of bombed out buildings. So on a little happier note, this just came out, this little chapbook, a collaborative ekphrastic chapbook with my dear friend Alexis Roan Fancher. We got ourselves through COVID with this little book that we gave ourselves each week an assignment, and we responded to some of her photographs in poems. So our poems are very, very different. And Harbor Editions just published it. So it's a twofer. If you order it, you get photographs and two poets. This is an Ars Poetica. It's called Crickets. It was first published in the Night Heron Barks. Crickets. In all these days and years, the only thing I've learned is that a poem needs an engine. Not a newscaster with ski slope hair, but colorful sweaters from old dead ants, penumbra of dust motes, crumpled Kleenex, the frayed edges of gossip. A poem is all about the things that happen in the meantime, while you were airing the pillows, driving a carpool. All you missed staring right at what the future knows that it won't tell you. There is a radio dial. We can go and listen to all of us breathing together, rubbing our chasm of souls in an all-night diner. A poem needs magic, a bell, a hammer, a noise inside a noise. Never the same thing twice. Only the pathos that comes over a crowd, the sound of night eavesdropping on the day. Listen to the glyphs the branches make on a moonlit night. A poem tenders no apologies for bad haircuts. It will howl with all your stray dogs in the alleyways of cigarette butts. A poem needs an engine, not to be sedate as arts and crafts. Glue made with water and flour. No, it needs the wheels to spin in the dirt where someone is kissing for the first time. It needs a wine glass stomped on at a wedding, even if it ends in divorce. Thank you all. Thank you all, everybody.
Thank you, Cynthia, and thank you all of our open mic readers, and thank you, Gary Glauber, for being our featured reader this evening. I'm so honored to have you all as our part of our Sheila-Na-Gig community.